Hello, this is Arun Bagel and now I will talk about karma, and here chapter 2 and part 3 of karma. Why do some people suffer more than others? Why didn't the universe create everyone equal? And why are some disabled and others able bodies? Why are some poor and others are rich? If there is a God, why didn't he create everyone equal? Why couldn't everyone carry positive karma? Why couldn't everyone have the same software? What is the point of all this terrible inequality? These are questions that have plagued human beings since the dawn of time. Now pause and examine this with absolute clarity. If you do, you will see that the primary cause of human suffering is not physical handicap or poverty. The cause of human suffering is oneself. Let us first make the distinctions between pain and suffering. Pain is physical. Pain is produced whenever there is any injury to the body. Pain is the body's way of alerting you that something is wrong, that action must be taken. Pain is useful, it is valuable wake-up call. Suffering, on the other hand, is psychological. It is produced by you. It is 100% self-manufactured. You don't have a choice about being in pain, but you do have a choice about suffering. You can always choose not to suffer. Let us look this closely. 1,000 years ago, people all over the world lived quite happily in modest dwellings. That was not a problem. The problem today is that someone lives in a mansion and someone else lives in non-bedroom apartment. That is the source of latter suffering. Someone has 3 cars and someone else has 1 car. This is the source of the latter's suffering. Someone vacation abroad and someone else doesn't. That is the source of latter suffering. So, it is not the physical situation that causes a misery. It is the way you react to it. Your karma is not in what is happening to you. Your karma is the way you respond to what is happening to you. Human beings are capable of suffering just about anything. Someone could not get into college, so they suffer. Someone else gets into college and can't get out, so they suffered. Someone cannot get a job, so they suffer. Someone is given a job and now they suffer even more. Someone isn't married, so they suffer. Someone gets married and they are in agony. Someone has no children, so they suffer. Someone has children and so they are in constant turmoil. Your suffering is not because of your circumstances. Your suffering is because of the way you have made yourself, and that is what you need to look at. But what about fate and fortune? What about the endless debate between free will and destiny? These questions will vex many people. Whenever I am asked these questions, my first response is to point out that this argument can raise on forever. Do you want to spend your life debating it? Like the chicken and egg argument, it can go on until the end of time. It happened one day after a break of almost 25 years. Sankaran Pillai met up with a bunch of his college friends. They all gathered in a restaurant to celebrate. They ordered and food and drinks and came. As they are talking, naturally the inevitable questions come up. What do you think come first, the chicken or the egg? A huge debate began. But as everyone was busy arguing, Sankaran Pillai was busy guzzling down his drink and eating whatever snack come his way. Then his friend asked, "Hey, are you not interested in such an important debate? Don't you want to know which do you think came first, the chicken or the egg?" Sankaran Pillai looked up and said, "Whichever you ordered first will come first." Do you really want to spend the rest of your life discussing free will and destiny? In the East, we simply say your life is your karma. This means that how much your karma you can take into your hands depend on how much of you has become conscious. If you have mastery over your physical body, 15 to 20% of your life and destiny will be in your hands. If you have mastery over your psychological process, 50 to 60% of your life and destiny will be in your hands. If you have mastery over your very life energies, 100% of your life and destiny could be in your hands. Suppose I plant a mango seed. Can I expect that coconuts will fall out of the mango tree when it grows up? Can I expect cherries or apples? Now, that obviously would be absurd. If you plant a mango seed, you can expect only mangoes. That much is determined by the seed. But there are other considerations over which do you have control. How many mangoes will the tree yield? What will be the quality of mangoes? How long will it yield them? Over these factors, you certainly do have control. I should add a caveat. If you dig deep enough into life, you can change even the nature of the seed. But that takes a level of yogic accomplishment that is beyond the scope of this book. So that is a story we won't get into here. What most people call luck is just your ability to be at the right place at the right time. Many of your capabilities are still unconscious, so you do not have complete control over the kind. Karma means that you can change your destiny, not simply be ruled by it. But at the same time, there is something wonderful about this ability to create joy in all kinds of circumstances. These people may be poor, but they are not suffering. Suffering and misery are always by choice. Physical pain has, of course, to be handled in a very particular way. But suffering is only of the mind. If you are suffering mentally, it means that you are the source of your own suffering. You are the manufacturer of your own anguish. The karmic substances within you may happen to contain all the necessary ingredients to create suffering. Perhaps you planted all these ingredients unconsciously in your past. So what can you do about this today? The answer is simple. Don't manufacture suffering for yourself today. Maybe terrible things happened to you yesterday. Maybe you lost everything that is precious to you. But this morning when you get up, you still have the choice not to manufacture suffering for yourself. Yes, the ingredients of misery are present. They are waiting, perhaps even tempting you. But they cannot become suffering by themselves. Suffering has to be freshly baked every day. In other words, your karma cannot turn into suffering without your cooperation. Once you are aware, that is the end of your suffering. So, the source of your misery is not your past actions. The source of your misery is how you are processing the imprint of the past now. You may be carrying around a sack full of stinking garbage. Either you can smear yourself with it and get terrible miserable, or you can make good manure out of it and create a wonderful garden. Karma is the seed. What you are going to make out of this seed is entirely up to you. If I am given a packet of assorted seeds and I throw them all into my garden, perhaps all of them will sprout. Some of the mango seeds will yield very sweet fruit, but there may be some bitter seeds. The Parthenium grass may be an unwelcome weed, and yet I still have the choice to pull it out. I can remove what is superfluous and keep the rest. That is how your food is grown every day. A large part of agriculture is just weeding. There are actually more weeds than plant growing even in your own garden. If you keep weeding, you will have a garden. If you sit back defeated, you will have a patch of weeds. Well, of course, some have learned to enjoy the weeds too. The same holds true for your life. You have your seed karma, but you also have your weeding karma. This is where volition comes in. This is where intentions becomes paramount. If you decide not to perform your weeding karma, your life will be just an overgrown wilderness. If you choose to perform these simple functions, your life would yield an incredibly rich harvest. Now, Kula Vedana, the bait of collective karma. Now, is there something like collective karma? Is the suffering of a parent transmitted to the child? Why do some clans and communities seem to suffer more than others? Right now, we may perform actions as individuals, but what we can do affect many other people as well. Our acts of intelligence and stupidity have collective consciousness. If we just choose to live high up in the mountains, the karma of wild animals might affect us more. But since we have chosen to live among people in social situations, other people's intentions and actions affect us. This becomes our collective karma. There is something called Kula Vedana. This refers to the suffering of a collective. the suffering of a family, a clan, for a community. It means the suffering within you comes not just from your individual past, it comes from your forefathers and will be transmitted to your unborn child. This is why traditional societies often maintain very strict demarcations in terms of intermarriage. These demarcations later developed into orthodoxy and social discrimination, and they are not relevant in today's world. However, their origins were rooted in a certain understanding. The crux of this issue was not just about genetics. It was based on the understanding that a certain karmic memory imprinted on your energy system is transmitted to your child and thereby perpetuations suffering. It means you are creating the kind of karma that will definitely have a negative impact on future generations. Although these demarcations have no place in the modern world, many people are creating untold misery for future generations without being aware of it. Often a great deal of a self-deception is involved. These people may be regarded as pillars of society, paragons of virtue, but their ideas or their way of living can spread suffering for generations after them. In their ignorance, they are contaminating not only their own lives, but also those of their unborn offsprings. So, how you live is not just about you. Whether previous generations are liberated from their karma and whether future generations do not suffer also depends on how you exist. The kind of grace you are fortunate enough to receive in your lifetime can also affect the lives of those before and after you. The Indian epics have stories of kings who were born not to be kings, but to sages. In the practice, this is called niyoga. The queen would have a child with a sage instead of her husband. This was done with the full knowledge of the king. The idea was to break the chain of suffering within a family. The king did not want his children to inherit all the negative karma. He wanted a son to be a better one than he could ever produce. Today, this may seem outrageous and outlandish to us, but it was based on the simple logic that a kingdom deserved the best ruler. The king did not want to cripple or poison this offspring with his own suffering, his own greed, his own desire. He wanted the best for these people. Obviously, this practice is outdated and irrelevant to the modern times, as we have found democratic ways of choosing our leaders. But at the time, it was based on a certain perceptions of how life happens. If you go to a movie as a viewer, you may enjoy the entertainment, you may laugh, cry, eat your popcorn and come out. But filmmakers view the whole drama differently. They know how the film is made. They know the craft behind it. A mere moviegoer will never understand how the film was created. The same is true of a life. There was ancient wisdoms, traditions that understood how life worked, and certain practices that might seem strange to us today emerged from the perceptions. There is a very simple aspect to collective karma as well. At the start of the 20th century, the human population was 1.6 billion. As of August 2020, the world population was estimated at 7.8 billion. Here is an example of irresponsible karma. If we have a multiple at this rate, it is definitely our own doing. We cannot blame this on God's will. I often relate an anecdote about the time I went to an international conference on poverty. As statistics were being shared about the millions of children who die every year without nourishment, one participant stood up and said, "What, isn't all this divine will?" I said, "Yes, if somebody else is starving to death, of course, it must be divine will. If someone else's children are dying of a malnutrition, it must be a divine plan. But if you are starving, you will have your own plan, won't you?" Unfortunately, we have twisted basic aspect life around to shoot our own distorted, self-serving logic. In the name of divinity, we have taken away even the humanity from human beings. There has been too much talk about divinity in this world. You don't have to talk about the divine. If you allow your humanity to overflow, the divine will happen. It has to happen the aim should be to make yourself in such a way that you enslave the divine, not the other way around. Karma means actions. Whose actions? My action. Whose responsibilities? My responsibility. If you understand this simple formulation, karma will fall into place. No complex theory is necessary. Just look at it this way. The way I am right now is of my making. The way I will be tomorrow will also be of my making. This is karma. This is the most dynamic way to exist. Today, if a child walks before or without even basic nourishment in their body, this is our collective karma. It is our doing as a society, as a generation. We have not done what is needed to nourish that child. Maybe we did not produce that child. The child is consequence of the karma of two other individuals. But this is still our karma. Every time we see a malnourished child, a little pain happens within us. We cannot escape it. This is our karma. We have the technologies at our disposal today that could either create phenomenal well-being or destroy the planet several times over. If the ignorant are empowered, they run the risk of sabotaging humanity entirely. It does not take a nuclear holocaust. We are capable of gassing ourselves without any nuclear assistance. However, when each of us realizes that enormous consequences of our volition, thoughts and actions, it would be the dawn of great possibility, a conscious planet. We could now turn not merely into the architects of our own destiny, but into collaborators in the collective destiny of the human race.